Welcome back everyone to the recap of game number 3 of the FIDE World Championship 2024 between Gukesh D and Liren. And today we saw a dramatic turn of events by Gukesh leveling the score of the World Championship match, and let's have a look on how it happened. So this game we saw Gukesh going for d4 on the first move. So what I already said in the first recap as well, it's not easy to judge. Even though the Gukesh went e4 in the first game, you cannot tell if this will be his preparation for the whole match or if he will mix it up by every game. Generally, the tendency nowadays is that the top players play almost everything with both colors just to mix things up and to make things more difficult for their opponent. So Gukesh went for d4, knight f6, knight f3, d5, c4, e6. Pretty standard here, and here are the two main moves, knight c3 or g3 going to the Catalan. But Gukesh blitzed out c takes d5 and was showing that he had some ideas here. Usually this move order was seen as a kind of dull way to play. Since after e takes d5, knight c3, c6 would happen in the game, usually black gets the choice and gets the chance to move out his bishop to f5 right away. So therefore, usually knight c3 is played first, which leads to the queen's gambit. But of course, here black has many different options, which with c takes d5 black doesn't have. So I think it was a smart choice by Gukesh, avoiding the main theory here, and as it seemed, he was pretty deep when it came to this variation here. So Ding recaptured e takes d5, knight c3, c6. Now we got this Carlsbad structure, and queen c2 was played by Gukesh, hinting at the fact that white wants to avoid bishop f5 for as long as it's possible. If bishop g5 right away, I think bishop f5 would be an option. Also, bishop e7 would lead to this kind of a slow Carlsbad structure where the knight is already on f3, and after e3, white will go bishop d3, short castle. But usually white would like to have the chance to go bishop d3 and then knight from g1 to e2, which white doesn't have here. So black probably has a pretty good version of the Carlsbad structure here. But Gukesh went queen c2, g6, this is still the main move, so black still wants to get bishop f5, and now h3 is being played, which was already kind of a trend, but not many players have played this. So far, the idea is always to have g4 as an option, especially after bishop f5, what happened in the game. So bishop f5 was played, queen b3, queen b6, and now, as I said, g4 was played in the game, still part of Gukesh's preparation. Ding now took on b3, which is a good move. There were a couple of choices here. We were also analyzing it in the commentary. Bishop e6 was also one choice for black, just to go back. Now the bishop is a bit passive, but black will be able to challenge white's pawn structure on the king side with h5 sooner or later. This would have been one choice, maybe a bit safer than what Ding played in the game. Also, bishop e4 is one way, just trying to exchange off the bishop for the knight on f3 sooner or later. But Ding went for the very concrete queen takes b3, a takes b3, and bishop c2, going after the pawn on b3. Gukesh still blitzed out, being in preparation. Bishop f4 was played, and after h5, attacking the pawn on g4, now rook g1. The point of h5 is, I mean, it would look logical here to take on b3 with the black pieces, but after knight d2, now after bishop c2, rook c1, the bishop would be trapped, and after bishop c4, knight takes c4, d takes c4, e4, white has the bishop pair, and only sacrificed one pawn. If black were to hold on to it with b5, it would be already quite disastrous, since the bishop is coming to g2, and there will be lots of issues on this diagonal. So understandably, Ding went h5, challenging the pawn on g4. Rook g1 was played. In general, white doesn't really want to go g5, since now whenever the knight moves, let's say to d7, just as an example, the bishop will be able to get back to f5. So rook g1 was played, and with the pawn still being on g4, the bishop is still in somewhat of an awkward position, since it can never go back to f5, and in some cases it can be trapped. H takes g4 was played, hg4, knight bd7, a very strong spot by Ding Liren. This was kind of the only way for black to hold on, with the next move being the key idea. All other moves have some issues because white is having the idea of rook c1 followed by bishop takes b3 and then knight d2, when again the bishop is in trouble here. Also knight d2 right away is one important idea. when the bishop on c2 is just in quite a lot of trouble. So knight bd7 was played, now knight d2, and here the very instructive and important move played by Ding Liren is rook g8. So with the last move from white side, knight d2, white is actually threatening rook c1. Let's just say black does something slow like bishop e7, rook c1, and the bishop on c2 will be trapped. But the point of rook g8, now if white were to go rook c1, black has the counter attack with g5. Still, this would have actually been the best try, rook c1. Gukesh instead went for g5 himself. But yeah, rook c1 would have been a nice try, and after g5, bishop e3 would be very strong, which is not that easy to spot over the board. There were a couple of other ideas, but after rook c2, g takes f4, black is fine, because after g5, the pawn on g5 will probably be more of a weakness. And yeah, bishop e3 was critical, and here we were analyzing during the broadcast, and it was actually not so easy for black to equalize fully. The problem is if the bishop goes back to h7, there's knight f3 and the pawn on g5 is in quite a lot of trouble. And after bishop h6, it was important that white has rook h1, and if knight takes g4, now bishop h3, knight takes e3, bishop takes d7, king takes d7, f takes e3, when black will lose material along this file, because after rook g6 there is knight e5 check with a fork. But Gukesh went for g5, and yeah, this already allows Ding in a pretty comfortable position, because now after knight h5, bishop h2, the bishop on c2 will, or should have, came back to f5 when all of these white's moves are now, I mean, the pawn on g5 can be kind of a target, and white's center in many cases is somewhat overextended. Ding went rook h8, which is still a good move, f3, knight g7, still a good move, bishop g3, and here was the big turn of events by Ding playing rook h5, which was a very mysterious move to most of the commentary team and also most of the audience. We were talking about bishop e7 here, which looked very logical. Black still has to watch out for e4, but here after e4 there is bishop takes g5, and after rook c1, black can take here and take on b3, and therefore the bishop is not gone on c2. So after bishop e7, we were looking at a couple of other lines. I think it was rook c1 first, bishop f5, and now e4. But after bishop e6, we concluded here that black is already a little bit better, because the pawn on g5 is a weakness. And yeah, white center is just a little bit overextended. Black can slowly continue something like a6 maybe, knight b6, maybe even long castle in some cases, even though it might be a bit risky. The knight from g7 could in some cases go to f4. So yeah, this seemed like a position which Ding would have probably never lost and might even had some winning chances. But instead he went for this mysterious move, rook h5. Of course, the rook is attacking g5 here, but he was calculating the line, as he said in the press conference, and he just missed a move 5 moves later, which yeah, was then just the deciding factor of the game. So Gukesh played e4, the critical response, and now, yeah, the bishop on c2 is in a lot of trouble. D takes e4 happened, f takes e4, knight e6, and this was still part of Ding's calculation, rook c1, knight takes d4, bishop f2 attacking the only defender of the bishop on c2, bishop g7, and here was the critical moment where Ding missed Gukesh's reply, which was knight e2, a very, very strong idea. Bishop takes d4 right away, runs into bishop d4, and now the rook on g1 is hanging as well, and therefore white cannot capture immediately on c2. Even here rook g2 might be an idea. I'm just thinking here. But yeah, we were even saying this in the commentary here, bishop takes b3, knight takes b3, bishop e3, when black is fine because he will have 3 pawns for the piece, and the dark squares are pretty weak in white's camp. So Gukesh in the end found knight e2, and after that the position is basically just lost for Ding, because the point is if black takes here after bishop e2, the bishop is still trapped on c2, and on top of that the rook on h5 is hanging, so Ding tried knight takes b3, rook takes c2, knight d2, king d2, and black has 2 pawns for the piece, but it's simply not enough here. Knight e5 was played, and Gukesh played knight d4, which was a bit surprising to us during the commentary, but it turns out it's actually one of the best moves. We just thought it looks a bit shaky because if for some in some cases the knight would be removed from the square, then knight f3 is there, but Gukesh calculated everything, that everything is covered. Here we were mostly thinking about, I think it was rook c3 was one idea to cover this square. Possibly also there was bishop g2 in the position, but knight d4 was in the end played in the game. Rook d8 was Ding's reply, and now king e2. Again, basically the only way to stop knight f3, so king e2 happened. Rook h2, bishop g2, and now a6. So here Ding's time management was already an issue. Here he was down to 10 minutes almost, and only 28 moves were played. a6 also not doing much at all. Levon Aronian was suggesting a5 in the stream with the idea that sometimes a4 could be an idea to fix the pawn on b2. Even here b3 would have been strong as well, which was also played by Gukesh after a6. So b3 was played, and the idea is just in some cases knight c4 is not there anymore, and also the pawn on b2 is not hanging in some cases. Now Ding was just waiting around, rook d7 was played, rook c1, king e7, so he didn't have any time left, and also there is not really a constructive plan for black. Now Gukesh plays rook d1, king e8, again Ding is waiting, bishop g3 now, and now all white's pieces are coming back in the game. Rook h5, knight f3, finally trading off the strong knight on e5. Knight takes f3, king takes f3, another important idea. Maybe bishop f3 would have been good as well, but here black doesn't have to run into this trick here. After rook g5, bishop h4 would win the rook, because if the rook moves, then there's rook d8 with checkmate. But instead here he could take on g5 right away, when it's actually not so easy for white to convert this. But instead, Gukesh took on f3, and here the main difference is that after rook takes g5 here, there is rook d7, king d7, rook d1 with check, king e6, and now the bishop will be on h3 and not on f3, and there was bishop h3 check, when the king on e6 is in a lot of trouble. Ding tried bishop d4 after king takes f3, but now rook h1, and game is over. Basically, Ding played rook takes g5, bishop h3, f5, and I think that even after bishop f4 here, Ding even lost on time, but it anyway didn't really matter. I think he wanted to play rook h5, but here he lost on time because bishop takes f5 is just winning here. The point rook takes h1, bishop takes d7 with check, and now white is just a full rook up. So also a bit surprising that Ding lost on time. For those of you who don't know, there is no increment for the first 40 moves. It's only 2 hours per side. But still, to lose on time in a World Championship match doesn't happen that often. And time management is definitely something Ding has to work on. And it will be tough to come back after this round for Ding Liren, since he had a pretty good position and then just went pretty unnecessarily for this rook h5 move. But still, tomorrow is the rest day, so I'm hoping that Ding will be able to come back after that, come back even stronger. The next game, Ding Liren will have the white pieces, which will be on Friday. And I'll be commenting on that day as well on Friday. I'm just not there for the weekend, unfortunately. But make sure to join me in the commentary on Friday at 10 a.m. Central European time. I think I'll be there with Laura Unuk, and there might be another exciting guest as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's recap. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Other than that, I will see you guys in the following recaps.